Hello, and welcome to the fourth edition of the Wonder Women segment of the Maker Mom podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I am your host of the podcast. Every week, I release 2 episodes. On Wednesday is the Wonder Women segment, where I interview women makers of all kind, bring you their stories. And on Fridays is the episode that started the whole podcast, where I interview other maker moms about their journeys to becoming makers in the hectic life of being a mom. This week's guest of the Wonder Women segment is none other than the designer maker Kate Duncan out of Toronto, Canada. I learned about Kate after listening to her interview, which was episode 68 of the Clever podcast. So if you really enjoy this interview, you should go check that out as well, because they are two totally different interviews. So you will definitely learn all kinds of things about Kate from between both of those interviews. All right, before we hop in to the interview with Kate, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to the patrons over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Laura of the Oakley Soap Company, Mary Lou, Made by Mary Lou, Amy, Bison Valley Carving, Dan and Kelly, Reclaimed Living Store, Brandy, Studio Obey, Kathy, One Girl and Her Tools, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, and Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all very much for your patronage and your continued support on a monthly basis of the podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast and you want to help support it, hang out till the very end of the episode and I'll let you know a few different ways that you can help support the podcast. All right, with no further ado, let's hop on into the interview with Kate Duncan. Well, Kate, I always have my guests give their own introductions. So why don't you go ahead and tell people about yourself?
Cool. Okay. Well, my name is Kate Duncan. I'm a furniture maker in Toronto, Canada.
Awesome. Are you born and raised Canadian?
Yeah, I was born and raised on Vancouver Island, which is the other side of Canada over on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's a place that's like on my bucket list, because every picture I see, it looks absolutely gorgeous.
It is really beautiful. Yeah, it's really nice.
What's the population there like versus like Toronto? Because I know Toronto's like huge.
Huge. Yeah, I think Vancouver is about a third of the size of Toronto.
Okay.
Memory serves me.
All right. So let's chat a bit about growing up there. What was it like? What was your childhood like there?
It was I had a good childhood. My parents are pretty great. They're both accountants, so we like speak a different language. Usually the message gets through. So no, my childhood was great. I started taking woodshop classes when I was 12, and I just immediately got hooked. So grade 10, 11, 12, blah, 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 all through junior high and high school, I was taking shop classes. My instructor in high school, when I got to high school, my instructor was putting me in competitions, which sounds ridiculous, but if you're a geek, you can do woodworking competitions. You know, most kids like play basketball. You know? Yeah. Compete against other schools. Well, right. Exactly that, but for woodworking.
Is that typical? Because, having shop class available from junior high, like all the way through high school in Canada, because here it's not. Like, it depends on It depends on where you grow up.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty normal in Canada to have
Okay.
shop classes in high school. I actually, when I graduated from high school, I went to university to become a shop teacher. And then I taught high school wood shop for about 10 years.
Okay.
So I found that most schools had shop class. The schools that didn't have shop classes were usually private schools.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely used to be where like every high school,
Right.
had it here, but it's been one of those things in the US as like budget cuts to our public school system happens, like
Yeah.
all the extracurricular stuff, gets cut. So that's like shop class and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I find the same thing was kind of happening here in that when I first started teaching, this was eons ago, I would have, maybe 16 to 20 kids in my class, and I had like a decent budget to go buy wood, and it felt manageable. And then by the time my career was sort of rounding the bend and I'd been doing it for, 5 or 8 years, the budget every year just got cut and cut and cut and cut, and my class sizes just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So by the time I quit, I had like 30 kids in every block. I was buying lumber off Kijiji, trying to just make the budget go as far as I could. It was a struggle. It was, I felt like it was being systematically being shut down, like just making the program so unattractive that kids didn't want to sign up. And so then, the enrollment's so down. Oh, I wonder why that happened. Let's just cut the program. So it was a while ago that I was teaching. So maybe there's less classes. Like, I'm not sure.
Right. Did you go to university for that, like straight out of high school?
I did. Yeah. I did a 4-year undergrad in education.
So, fun fact, that's what I started out going to college for, was to be like an industrial tech teacher in high school. And my first, I was that for the first full year, I think. And then the first semester of sophomore year, I had my first education class. And I just realized, definitely at that point, I don't like kids enough to do this job.
Yeah.
I just don't like them well enough, especially since that's I'm going to be 22 when I get out of college. That's really close to age-wise, to high schoolers.
Really? Yeah. I used to get mistaken as a student.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. I started teaching, I was 22, 23, and it was awkward.
Did you find it hard at all? I mean, did you ever have an issue with your students respecting you because of that?
God, so much. I had a kid once after school. I had gone home and somehow he had broken into the shop, took a shit on my floor and videoed it and then put it up on YouTube. The janitors were so good to me. They cleaned it up before I even saw it, but I saw the video.
That is just crazy. Okay, now I'm going to ask a more pointed question about that. Do you think that was more relevant because of your age or because of your gender?
I think a bit of both, for sure. I think probably more to do with my gender, but I think also because I was so young, I was just giant target.
You hadn't quite been around the block yet to
No, I had it coming.
When you were in junior high and high school, were you what was the mix of kids? I mean, were you the only female or just part of a small handful?
No, I was the only one. I was the only one. looking back on it now, I'm like, why did I do that? Like, why did I even think that was okay? Or why wasn't I scared? Or like, but it didn't bother me. Like, I really, really wanted the stuff. Like,
right.
I really wanted to make the stuff and then like bring it home.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think your parents worried about that at all?
I don't think so. I don't think they did. I think they thought it was like kind of weird, but they weren't going to stop me.
Do you have siblings?
I have a younger brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he into any of the stuff you were into? No.
No, he's actually an accountant now too.
I was gonna just ask, like, did he become an accountant too?
Yeah.
So are you like a complete stranger or like the weird alien in the corner at your family gatherings?
I'm a little bit. I like to think of myself as the life of the party. I mean, there's 3 accountants. They
right.
all they can get. So yeah.
What was it? What do you think it was about like woodworking that attracted your attention so much as a kid versus like, I don't know, versus like an art class, or music or maybe you were into those as well. I don't know, but
I was in band class. But I think it was really like, it was the stuff. Like I really wanted the like bookshelves and the desks and like I wanted the little objects and I wanted the ability to like make more as I needed them, like little boxes for this thing over here or that thing over there or whatever it was. I wanted to have the ability to make things and I wanted those things in my life. It's really self-serving.
No, I think it's very valid. I find all of that very valid. I mean, I was the same way. I took shop first time junior high, and I was like so stoked. Like, what was funny about that is shop class. The only thing we actually made was like a CO2 car. We had to like design our own CO2 car,
I remember those.
And I was like so into it. I made like several different versions of that CO2 car. But then in high school, I didn't take shop. Unlike you, I was actually like, I was timid about being in a wood shop with all those guys. And I know a huge reason was like their end of the year project every year was to make a paddle.
Okay.
Which the high school males, you can probably visualize, would go running down the hallway, like smacking everybody's, rear ends with that paddle. And I just didn't see that going well, like being in class. And it also didn't like pique my interest at all of something to make. I'm like, nope, not into that.
It's important, right? Like if it's not something I want, then I'm like very not motivated to make it.
Exactly. So I took electronics instead, which I was still like, I was still like the only girl.
Yeah.
But I was in high school before everything on a circuit board became like so teeny tiny that you couldn't like manually solder them in place. So I went to the same geeky contest as you, except for mine were for electronics because my electronics teacher pushed me for that.
Glad I've never met geeky enough to meet me there.
There you go.
Yay! That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So okay, so you did shop. You taught shop for, you said 8 to 10 years?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, 10 years.
So why did you transition out of that?
Well, I gotta say, teaching was not for me. You dodged a bullet when you got out. Really, like it's like eat or be eaten. It was bad. It was not good. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter how fun or cool or how much effort I put in or didn't put in. The kids were just there to like eat you alive.
Yep.
So I really didn't like teaching. And then what really got me out of it was that I was in a motorcycle accident. So I was sideswiped by a car in a hit and run, and then I was run over by a bus, which was like bad day.
Yeah, very bad day.
So I had a hip reconstruction, and I had 7 screws and a metal plate put in my arm, and I was rolling around in a wheelchair for a while. It was about a year. I'm just really like, I was a hot mess. It was bad. So I was off work, and I just didn't want to go back. I was like, how can I make something? How can I use this time to do something so that I don't have to go back? And so, yeah, I manufactured a collection of furniture very, very, very slowly. Some days I would get to the shop, I would last 10 or 20 minutes, and other days I would get to the shop and I'd last a few hours. But it was kind of like a bit of therapy for me. Like, I really am not, I don't go to exercise classes or yoga. I'm like not that girl. But hanging out in the shop was like a way for me to sort of walk around and use my body in a way that was therapeutic. And so, yeah, it took me like the whole year to actually get anything completed because it was like a snail's pace. But yeah, then I took some photos and started an Instagram feed and then got a couple orders, and it's sort of, I went back to teaching just part-time, and I did that for a while, but then the business kind of got up and running and I was able to quit. Yay!
So as somebody who like basically has the dream of like what you are living, what you get to live is like my dream. How, like, I mean, was it really a matter of like, okay, here's my collection and boom, like overnight fame? I'm guessing not.
That's the easy answer. That's like,
right. No, we're going to dive in a little bit.
You got me. You got me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they're really like palatable, made for podcasts and YouTube, and that story is that it just was that simple. But actually it was like incredibly challenging. It was like 5 years of like blood, sweat, tears, no money. There's no money. No money. It was just sort of me scraping together, part-time teacher paychecks to try to make it all sort of balance out at the end of the day. And yeah, it was really tough. It was really, really tough. There were some years where I did nothing in sales. Like I would sell 3 pieces and then the rest would just be me prototyping and making things just to take pictures of things. And trade shows, oh my gosh, trade shows, don't get me started on trade shows. Terrible. They're like, I don't know, a means to an end. I don't even know. Right. But I did a couple trade shows and they were not helpful really. I did do one show in New York about a year ago, and that seemed to make a big difference for me.
Is that the IFCC?
ICFF? No, I didn't do that one. I did a little show. It was quite obscure, actually. It was called Next Level. And it was only the second year it had been running, and it was put on by a bunch of other designer makers that lived in New York. I think there was 4 or 5 of them. And so they all got together and put together this show. And there was, I think, about 40 other designer makers represented at the show. And I don't know why they invited me to do it. I don't, they just did. And I was like, yes. And I did it. And it was great. I got picked up by 2 showrooms, one in Manhattan and one in Boston. I got some really great press coverage. I made a really great sale. And I seem to be continuing to get traction from kind of all of that.
From that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it feels like, I have found, especially with doing the podcast and getting to talk to a bunch of people who do this type of thing, that there's 2 different routes, right? That people either take. Either they do solely like commission work, and it's like somebody's like, I found this on Pinterest, make this for me type thing. Or it's, okay, I'm designing my own, whether it's line of furniture or home decor, whatever that is, right? Yeah. The commissions is like always seems more successful, at least up front.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's usually people who are always looking for somebody to make something for them.
Yeah.
The other, not so much. And I feel like you're probably along the same line of thinking of me, but like, what made you, like, was it even a consideration to do like the commission work, or were you like, nope, I want to do my own thing from the get-go?
I really hate commission work. Are
you sure we weren't twins separated at birth?
Maybe. This is a good thing. We're onto something here, but I really don't like commissions.
No.
Usually what people ask me to make is, exactly, something they found on Pinterest. And I want to say nothing against Pinterest, but I really don't like Pinterest either. So everything against Pinterest. What I end up getting asked to make is stuff I don't want to make, like stuff I don't see the value in. It might, it might look pretty on Instagram or Pinterest or wherever the image came from, but it's not actually necessarily a piece that really functions in my mind. Like my brain has been live, work, eat, sleep, furniture since I was little. Like I know at this point, I really feel like I have a good grasp as to what goes into a piece of furniture, and we'll make it work, and we'll make it be a piece of furniture that you want to live with and enjoy and look at. Where some of the stuff was just, I was just like, I'm not making that. Gotta go somewhere else. Yep. Exactly. And you're going to hate it. You're not actually going to like it because the functionality of it isn't there or whatever. So, I find commission work a real struggle, and I find it was a struggle when I was open to commission work. I found it was a struggle to get even people understanding like what my specialty is, like what I'm really good at. So they would come to me and ask me to do like live edge stuff or reclaimed furniture or outdoor furniture or, and it's not that I can't make those things, but that's not where my strength lies.
Right.
That's somebody else's gig. So then I ended up kind of getting this smattering of really weird work that I really wasn't interested in making, that I really didn't feel suited my skill set. It just felt like it was kind of throwing me off track. And then I would invest in making this thing, but I should, at the end of the day, I was like, what? That was such a waste of time. Like, I didn't really learn anything or gain anything.
I'm the exact same way. Like, and I'm getting better at, I shouldn't have said that. I've always been good at basically saying no. Like, nope, not.
No, exactly. Okay, so you're going to have to teach me that one.
Because, or if I don't want to flat out say no, I'll put a price on it, then I know there's absolutely no way they're going to pay me to make it. And then if they say yes, I'm like, well, fine. I get a crap load of money for something that. But it's the same thing. Like usually I'll say it's more like if that doesn't fit, like if you even remotely went to my website, you would see that doesn't fit anything that I make.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I can build it for you. It's probably going to take me twice as long because I'm not even set up to do it that way, which means it's going to be more expensive than if you go to, and I've kind of started getting like a list of people that I'll like recommend them go talk to if that's really what they want. So I'm the same way, but as far as like not wanting to do commissions, unless it's something like I've had a couple that have been great, or I'm doing this, a bunch of these carved bowls with resin finish on them right now. And those were all commissions, but it was like the only thing I let them pick was what colors go into the resin. That was it. Like they have no say over what the bowl looks like when I carve it. They have no say over like any of the process. Yeah. And that works because it's like commissioned art then, right? Yeah. And so it's like, it's my work, it's what's in my head, and you still end up loving it. So that's like the best of both worlds.
Right. Money. I'll do good things with it.
That's right. Exactly.
I promise.
That's right. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like, I'm like you. Basically, I haven't necessarily honed like what my full-on design style is yet. That's still like continuously evolving. But I have seriously been designing furniture since as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
Like, as a child.
It's so crazy how you can like, spot a bad piece a mile away. You're like, that's terrific. Who wants to live with that? But it's like not good. I am the biggest furniture snob. It's terrible.
So am I. Yeah, so am I. It is pretty bad. And I've asked some people that on the podcast. I had a woman on and she was talking about like how she takes pride in making it like a super quality piece. Well, like, sand the bottom side of it just so that if you put your hand under there, it feels amazing. And I asked her, I said, so it's ruined you for buying furniture ever again? And she's like, yeah, I can't. Like, you can't buy furniture.
Totally. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why the obsession with it. Like, just furniture, Kate. Like, go to IKEA.
Don't go to IKEA. Do not go to IKEA. So how did you even learn about things like doing trade shows, like, and knowing that's the route you had to go? Like, even having that knowledge, I think is not something, even people who want to make and sell their own designs, I didn't really understand that until, just a couple years ago. So I think it's not something very well known out there.
Yeah, I think I looked around a lot. I looked around at like people that were doing what I wanted to do, and did like a deep dive. I creeped the fuck out of them. Tried to figure out what is it, what are they doing, and how are they doing it, and
So today's podcast episode is sponsored by Bad Workwear North America. They are an Australian-based workwear brand that launched in the US and Canada last fall. Now, I haven't tried their gear yet myself, but have heard great things about their gear from our friends in the maker community, especially women who are excited to find workwear that looks great and fits right. They carry a women's line of items, but based on the slim fit of all their clothing, all their line is considered unisex, as women have great success just sizing down in the men's items and getting a great fit. If you want to check them out, visit www.badnorthamerica.com and use the code MakerMom10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. All right, let's head back into the episode.
Yeah, trade shows are a huge can of worms, though. I could go on and on about trade shows. I've had so many terrible experiences and a couple of good ones. So that's one that if somebody's going to dive into, I really recommend like researching the fuck out of them, because they're so expensive. The booth fees are thousands of dollars.
Right.
And then you've got like easily a trade show will suck the life out of you for at least 2 weeks, probably longer. Like by the time you build out your booth display, move in, set up, do the trade show, which is like 4 or 5 days of hell.
Right.
And then pack up and then like recover in the fetal position for like 3 days. Then like easily 2 weeks have melted out of your life that you'll never get back in. And also you have to have work in the show that is really the kind of work that you want to sell. Like, so how do you do that? If you're lucky, you have a client and you can keep the piece and show it and then deliver it. But more often than not, I was just manufacturing furniture for nobody, just to put in the booth for 4 days and then take it home. And then
that's what I was going to ask you. Like, I've kind of, I had been working with interior designer here locally. And so like I would, let's say it was like a line of like bar stools.
Yep.
And so I would build out like 4 or 5 of them to be on her showroom floor, so I didn't have to keep the inventory on hand. But then what happens is like basically now I have like a room in my basement that's like full of inventory that never sold, right? And it's still available. So I've like basically this year I told my wife, I'm like, whatever I make for my line of furniture is going in our house. We will have pictures taken of it, and it will be up on the website as like available for somebody to order for me to make that thing.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be building out inventory because it's just too expensive, for one, to have that much inventory on hand.
Yeah. It's so labor intensive, hey? Like, the pieces are just like weeks and weeks of labor sunk into them. And so then, and then what do you do at the end? Like, wow, that there was my vacation or whatever, like,
right.
So for a long time, I was manufacturing samples that I wanted in my home, that I needed in my home. And then I realized that the market that I was trying to sell to was not aesthetically similar to me. So like I love my work. I love the latest collection. I launched a new collection last year. I love it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I absolutely love the work. I think it's beautiful. I totally stand by it, but I don't want it. Like, it's actually too like luxurious, too like, over the top for my like simple little shitty apartment in Portugal. Like, it's like this extravagant work, right? So it feels out of place, and I have a dog, and it's so it's a tough one for sure. If you're making work that you like, that works in your home, then that's awesome. I did that, and it worked really well for a while. And then now I'm kind of doing the opposite. We're kind of flipping around. Now I've got a couple of showrooms, and so I manufacture my prototypes, and they go to the showrooms.
But I mean, you can now, right? Because you have that luxury, I guess, of having that showroom available to you.
Yeah, the 2 showrooms that I have are incredible. They're really, really good to me. They send me a lot of work, and they always pay right away. And
is it a commission type system there?
Yeah, they don't take a huge portion, which is nice. It's not like a 50-50 thing. So that's really helpful. I think when you're talking about that kind of price point, 50-50 just doesn't, that's not going to work. Like, it's a $20,000 piece. You can have 5.
Right.
it's also a $20,000 piece, and I have to make it. Like that's
Right.
going to take many hours and much material, and like, yeah. So
when you're working with that model, I mean, have you found like clients are okay? Because it's going to take, like you said, I mean, it takes you time to make it, right? They're looking at the model on the floor, but that's not waiting in a warehouse somewhere to get that day.
Imagine? That'd be so hilarious. I walk into a warehouse all full of stuff that I made. Oh, that'd be kind of fun, though.
It would.
No, they're fine. They're fine. Usually, like I think a really common lead time is like 12 to 14 weeks or 10
Okay.
weeks. So most designers know that, and then they, make sure that they're picking the furnishings way before they need them. Like I have designers right now that I'm quoting on work that's not due until December or January. So that's great. I'm like, yeah, I can fit this in December, no problem, and gives me lots of, warning and stuff. The worst is when somebody's like, oh, I need it in 3 weeks. It's like,
no.
Can't help you.
Yeah. Okay, so that price point that you're at, I think, obviously your time, your energy, your expertise is all worth that. I get that. That tends to be kind of the price points that I would be looking at for a lot of, my designs as well. Yeah. But what's always in the back of my head is like, what happens if another 2008, market huge recession happens? Like, how do you keep yourself employed by yourself in times like that? Is that ever a concern, or do you feel like there's still that market even during those type of times?
I try not to think about it.
Sorry.
I really try not to think about it because it's super scary. I mean, gosh, I went from like a really cushy teacher's salary, like super secure union, whatever, to like, whoa. I mean, it wouldn't change anything because I love it, but yeah, I try not to think about it. And I remind myself time and time again that the people buying my work are not like me. Like they're not.
You're saying they have large disposable income. That's what you're saying.
I don't even know what a 401k is, but I think it's something fancy, and I think they all have them. Like I don't even know what that is. They all have like investment portfolios and shit I know nothing about. So I try, and you look at all the stats and you read all the articles, and I mean, COVID is really just an exercise in making rich people richer. So
right.
Okay, well, as long as there's still rich people buying my work, I'm gonna keep making it. It's weird. It's a really weird. Like if I think about it, it's quite uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be making furniture for the 1%. But that's kind of the little corner that I backed myself into. So, yeah, it's a weird position to be in, and I try not to think about it too much. I just cross my fingers.
That works. That works.
I think too, really pulling together, like a strong circle. It doesn't need to be huge, but like a bunch of people that I have in my pocket that like, if things, shit does hit the fan and I'm out of work, I don't have jobs.
Right.
Then I would call and I'd be like, hey, I don't have any work right now. And usually these are people that I'm okay to be really legit with. And I would say, I don't have any work. What do you got? I'm happy to do whatever it is. I'll give you a good price. Like,
right.
Please. whatever, I'm happy to take your work, whatever it is. And then that's when I would do the sort of custom stuff I don't like to do. But if it's through a good designer, then usually it's not terrible.
Right.
The homeowner that I sound like an asshole. God,
No. I wanted to, before we get to your show that you before you get to that, I want to talk a little bit about press coverage. So you talked about, and I know you've been in recognized as this awesome designer in different magazines and such. Is that any of that ever been things you've gone after, or have they been happy accidents type thing?
Most of it, most of the really great coverage is a happy accident. I do pitch. I will, if I have something important happening, I will send out a press release. But often, press releases are great and they're important, but if the publication isn't looking for exactly what you're selling, then they're going to do they might just do a little blurb somewhere, which isn't super helpful. And then in the odd time, it might work out fantastic. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
Right.
And it turns into this amazing thing. But a lot of the press coverage that I get is organic. It's mostly organic.
Okay. So do you think that your show has helped with that?
Yeah. So Address is a design show that I've produced and curated for 7 years. And I think it has helped with press coverage. I think the show itself is really fun and a lot of people attend. It's there's a huge party with hundreds of people that come, and all the big media will come. There'll be a media sneak peek, an hour before the launch party. So an hour before the launch party, there's all the media and press, blah, 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 and all the high rollers or whatever come through. And people like that. People they like a party and drink and, and if you're the one that's putting it on, they like you. So I was getting press coverage before Address, and I did get some really great coverage before Address, but Address was definitely kind of kicked it up a notch for sure. This is a nice speaking point too, right? That's what press wants, is what's new. They always want what's new. I'll launch a collection and 2 months later they'll be like, well, what's new? And I'm like, well, I just did this enormous thing 2 months ago. It's still pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good what's new, once a year. It's in everybody's mind.
Yeah. Now I know a bit of the story about why and how Address got started. But I don't know if those who will be listening to this know. So do you want to kind of give your little spiel about how and why you started it?
It's been controversial. I got in a bit of hot water with it, actually. So I started Address in, was it 2014? I want to say 2014. Maybe it was 2013. Anyway, I had done a trade show, and I hated it. I wanted to rip my own eyeballs out. It was an awful experience. I'd never done a trade show before. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. I had no idea what I was doing. I just thought I would show up with my furniture and it would be
amazing, right? Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was not amazing. It was terrible. I was way in over my head. I was very not prepared. and the show itself wasn't a good show. It was a bad show.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice and be aware that I'm like.
Well, okay, maybe you can help clarify this, because I definitely don't know, because I've never been to one. What is a good show? What is a bad show? How do you classify them as good versus bad?
Right, and I think they're really specific to your product. So the show, and I shouldn't say it's generally a bad show. I mean, I'm sure the show is good for a lot of people. There's people that go back and show at that show every year. So I'm assuming it's good for those people.
Right.
But it wasn't good for me as a designer maker. I felt like the audience, it was almost as if the audience was like walking through Home Depot. They were like shopping for sinks and flooring and paint colors, and
I gotcha.
Not there to find luxury furniture. And so my brand was just like lost. Like people would walk by my booth and they'd be kind of like, what is this furniture?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
where's this from? Oh, I make it. You make it? I make it. Where? In Vancouver. You make this here in Vancouver. What are you doing here? What? I'm here to show you that I made this here in Vancouver. It was just this weird, like, head scratchy.
Yeah.
Sides. Like it just didn't make any sense at all. And I did the show. I did the show a couple times, trying to see if I could make it work, and I couldn't make it work. So I did the show in 2013. It was a really bad experience. The show the booth fee cost me $5,000, which in hindsight actually isn't that much money for a booth. But it cost me $5,000. This was like eons ago when I was just starting out. So $5,000 at the time was like a lot of money. I mean, it's still a lot of money. It's still like, can make or break. But at the time it was like a lot of money. I had manufactured all these new pieces. I had hired movers. The movers were like $500. I remember I was so strapped for cash. The movers were moving into the show to unload the work, and they were put in like a holding pen because there was just a huge lineup of trucks trying to get into this giant convention center. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm paying my movers like $100 an hour. Oh my God, I'm hemorrhaging money. Like I couldn't even afford to like have movers sit in a holding pen an hour waiting in line. Like this was like catastrophic. So clearly I was way in over my head. And so the next year I said to myself, well, fuck that shit. I can take $5,000 and light it on fire faster than that.
Right.
I'm going to take the money that I spent on that show and I'm going to just blow it. I'm just going to blow it. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to see what I can do with it. And so I was able to pull together, I think 9. I think there was 10 of us all together the first year, designer makers. I rented a space. We had a great party. It was awesome. We had this thyme and lime vodka lemonade that people are still talking about. Like people still talk about that vodka lemonade. So we had a kick-ass party, and I partnered with a designer who hosted this event called Designer Happy Hour, which is exactly what it sounds like. So once a month, she would send out a mail out, and all these people would come to this designer happy hour, and all the interior designers would just drink and chat about projects they're working on. So she hosted designer happy hour at the first address. And that partnership really actually made address what it is. Like if I didn't have Amber bringing designer happy hour, I don't think address would have been nearly as successful as it was. Because all the designers would come and then the designers would tell all their friends, and then all their friends would trickle in over the following week. And so that was kind of our strategy for the first couple years, was to kind of have this big party and then tell your friends, and then they would all come. And then by the last few years, I mean, we would just have 500 people show up to our launch party. Like I rented a 10,000 square foot warehouse last year. Like it got to be so big. So Yeah, that's address, and why it started was because I was so fucking arrogant. I thought I could take $5,000 and do better. Which I couldn't. I didn't. The first year was a terrible show. And the last year where I rented a 10,000 square foot warehouse, the budget was more like $50,000. So,
Right.
you know, live and learn, right?
Right. But and one of the things I wanted to ask, so you talked about the show you went to in New York that was Designer Makers, and then address is is it still like mainly like Designer Makers?
Yep.
Do you find that, I mean, is that common at most shows, like that the designers there are actually making the pieces themselves?
No, and that's what's really frustrating about trade shows is that they don't really service designer makers. They service like bigger corporations.
Yeah.
And like Miele or GE or Benjamin Moore, like these huge companies with huge marketing budgets. That's who they really service.
Mm-hmm.
And then the designer makers, there's been such a sort of resurgence of people making their own work over the last 10 years. We just ended up kind of slotting ourselves into that model, but it doesn't really work. I mean, the trade show that I did, the little obscure show I did in New York last year, wasn't a big trade show, and I did fantastic. It was phenomenal. So I don't know. Trade shows are weird. They're a weird ball of wax. If you're thinking about doing one, if anybody's thinking about doing one, like ask a lot of questions. How many people come through? Where are they from? What kind of press coverage can I expect? What are the booth fees? Ask about discounts for the booth fees, because those people give out discounts left, right, and center. And you know, if you're a young up and coming designer maker, you're actually the kind of cool factor for the trade show. You're actually there doing the trade show a favor by being there and being cool. Like, nobody goes to a trade show to see Benjamin Moore. Like, no offense to Benjamin Moore, but like, people go to trade shows to see something new, and what's new is presented by designer makers. So, and designer makers aren't a huge corporation, and they should be getting a discount. I can't afford what GE can pay for, or Miele or KitchenAid or whatever, you know, whoever's picking on all the big ones, but you know what I mean? Like, they should be paying their fee, and then designer makers should have a much more reduced fee to get them in the door and to make the show really cool.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's what's held me back from, I was talking with a designer maker in New York through Instagram, and said, you know, because I guess he does ICFF every year, and then another one that he does every year. And he said that's usually how he meets the majority of, you know, his clients and stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, I would love to go. And he's like, well, I can hook you up with my contact. I'm like, I cannot afford, like, I don't even know what it is, but my guess is it would be at least $5,000. And I don't have that kind of liquid cash just lying around to pay for that.
Yeah.
But I know, and I've reached out to you too about wanting to do something more in the Midwest here, versus, you know, it's like, especially in the US, it feels like all of those things are either on the East Coast or the West Coast, and there's like nothing in the middle, which is crazy to me, because Chicago is only like a 3-hour drive from me, and you would think that they have more of those type of things, but they don't.
Yeah. What does Chicago have? Is there not one in Chicago that's big?
I don't think they have. Well, so it's kind of funny. So it's like, if you're like me, like a designer maker, and you're somebody new, then you can only do like this spring show and this fall show, and there's a whole application process, and you have to show like how your booth would be set up, and all of that. And maybe that's normal. I don't know. But again, that's like, it's not impossible, but it would take probably over a year of planning on my behalf in order to make that happen.
It does. It does. A whole year.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And even paying for it, like I'll sign up and then I'll pay installments. So, you know, and then I know they're coming. They're on the calendar in like bright red letters.
Right.
This is due.
Right.
Yeah, another way that you could do it is if you got together a couple of designers and formed like a collective.
Yeah.
You guys could collectively show in a booth. That's another like great option to just get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of you know, there's cost sharing, which is nice. And then it gets you the experience. And even just the first time, it gets you the experience like without so much damage.
Well, even to your point, I mean, you're saying like you're like wiped for like 2 weeks. Like, even though some people may or may not be surprised, I'm actually very introverted and very quiet. And so, like, you know, when I go even to like a maker conference, like that's just for a weekend, like I'm like wiped after that. And I get home and it's kind of like, wife, don't talk to me. Kids, don't talk to me. Pets, stay away. Like,
totally. I'm fetal position.
Yes.
Yes.
So, you know, that's also one of those things that I'm like, I'm sure I would be completely wiped after having to have your kind of game face on all day long.
Sometimes it's nice, like, and so I would, again, really strongly recommend the, like a collective, because if there was, say, 3 or 4 or 5 of you that were all sharing a booth, you wouldn't have to be there the whole time.
Right.
You could go away. You could take Saturday off and just go on Friday and maybe half a day Sunday. And if somebody comes that's really interested in your work, the other people in your collective would obviously market your stuff too, right? And sometimes that works out better. Like sometimes it's better to have other people talking about your work than you. So
I could see that.
Yeah.
So one more thing I'm curious about before I let you go here, and that is, you talk about, you know, you're a designer maker. Do you feel like you've tapped into a maker community around you, near you, afar? Or do you feel like you're more tapped into like the designer community?
I would say a bit of both. I would also say that it's like surprisingly like quiet. It's surprisingly independent. I have definitely like a designer maker community that I'm a part of in Vancouver, but then I moved to Toronto in October, so I don't really know very many people here at all. I have a couple people that I know, but not a ton. I thought I would really miss it. Like I was like, oh no, I'm moving to Toronto. I don't know anybody and all my friends. And then I'm here and I'm like, I actually just like, again, I sound like an asshole, but I actually don't really miss it. Like, I'm enjoying the quiet time.
Is it extra quiet time though now with COVID? Like,
it's extra
sequestered inside.
Yeah, totally. It's really extra quiet, but I'm so busy. I've never been so busy. I've never had so many orders like back to back to back to back. So, I mean, that's good.
So you have a shop space there then?
Yeah.
Like, is it all yours or is it like a co-working type space?
No, it's a shop that I bought into as like a business partnership with another woman, Juna Day. She's a furniture maker as well, but she's kind of veered off in a bit of a different direction. So she's very rarely at the shop these days. So June and I co-own her wood shop, which she's been in for the last 5 years. And I moved in there in March, just before COVID, shut everything down. And we have like a membership area. So we have I think we have 12 right now members that pay a fee to use the equipment. Because I mean, a whole wood shop for just me and Juna, that's like unnecessary. So
yeah, but still awesome. Just
yeah, aren't there all the time. Mostly just me.
Yeah.
And then, every now and then a member will pop in for a couple of hours, do whatever they're working on, and then they'll leave. But yeah, I have my own shop, but I share it with a business partner, Juna, and then Juna and I share it with 12 other members, and that their membership fees really offset the cost of the shop, which is really fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. Keep overhead low.
Yes. Yes. Like you said, the whole no money thing,
Oh, it sucks. It's the worst part.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is. And like the struggle is so real. Like it's such an expensive craft.
It is. I know. All right, Kate, we are at the end of our time.
It was so fun.
I know. Absolutely.
And Chicago's not far from Toronto. So does that mean you're not far from Toronto?
I thought Toronto was closer to like New York. Isn't it close? Toronto's like close to New York, right?
I think so. We're kind of close.
Somewhat close. Yeah, somewhat close. I mean, you could definitely do it in a drive. I think I looked it up once. I think it's like be like a 13-hour drive.
Oh, that's further.
Or not like, but I mean a flight, obviously.
Yeah.
If Toronto is full of like awesome woodworkers. I just chatted with, and I call her a young woman because she's like 23, so that's young for me. I just chatted with her for this same segment of the podcast a few weeks ago. Her work is amazing, and I told her about you, and and the show address, and I said you should definitely look Kate up. Her name is Dej Hamilton.
Okay.
Yeah, and her work is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Rad.
So I was like, yeah, you should definitely look Kate up because she's in, I don't know what part of Toronto she's in, but she's in some part of Toronto.
Okay. Was it Hamilton? Deja Hamilton?
Dej Hamilton, yeah. So Daej for Dej,
okay.
And then Hamilton, yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, but before I let you go, I gotta give you a chance to let people know how to follow along with you.
Oh yeah. My website is kateduncan.ca, or you can follow on Instagram. It's Kate Duncan Design at Kate Duncan Design. I'm not very good with the technology, but you can message me and I might reply. Email's best.
Email's best. Okay.
Yeah. Info at kateduncan.ca.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks again so much, Kate. This is
fun.
Really fun. I'm glad I met my, twin born in an entire another country.
Totally.
All right, so again, that was Kate Duncan, who is a designer and maker out of Toronto, Canada. I will include how you can follow along with Kate in the show notes for today's episode, or if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description down below. All right, so I told you if you stuck around to the end, I tell you a few different ways that you can help support the podcast if you are really enjoying these 2 episodes a week. So the easiest one, the quickest one, is make sure that whatever you are listening to or watching this podcast on, that you hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and the bell so you're notified every time a new episode goes up. All right, then you can go a little further. It's still super easy though, is to head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review that helps other people find out about the podcast and just helps the algorithm over there so more people find out about it and hear these amazing stories of these amazing women. All right, but if you're really super duper loving the podcast, probably the best way to help support the podcast is to head on over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/MakerMom podcast. There's 4 different tier levels over there. $1, $3, and $5 tier levels that get you into the tribe. There's different merch at each of those levels, different bonuses. And then a very new tier level that got added, the $30 a month tier level, and that makes you an official sponsor of the podcast. So you will get your own little ad spot about your company over there for every episode that month, which if there's 4 weeks, that means you got 8 episodes for that month that are coming out with a spot about your sponsorship. So that is a great opportunity. And then lastly, you can just buy some merch. There's a Maker Mom tee with the Mom Squad listed on the back, which are all of the Maker Moms from the first 65 episodes that are currently listed on the back. There will probably, in another few months, be another shirt coming out with the updated list of the Mom Squad, since we are now going to be nearing 100 episodes so far. All right, and you can get to there through my website for Freeman Furnishings. So that's just freemanfurnishings.com/shop and hit apparel, and the Maker Mom tee is right there for you. All right, one last thing about all of this. So I love doing these podcast interviews. Truly love doing them. And now with 2 of them a week, loving it even more. However, that does mean it puts in a bit of a strain to get both episodes out in a timely manner so you guys can listen to them every Wednesday and every Friday. So if you're loving it, especially loving the new edition of this Wonder Women segment, like this one today with Kate Duncan, and you want to see that continue, please strongly consider going over to Patreon and joining the tribe there, because the more that comes in there will allow me to possibly get some assistance in helping to put out the episodes. All right, so I hope you have a fantastic week, and I hope you get to make something, and I'll see you next week.